When Priscilla opened the drawer inside Graceland, she wasn't looking for ghosts, just an old scarf. Instead, she found a letter dated June 26, 1977, the night Elvis walked on stage for the last time. One page in his handwriting revealed what he never said out loud, and it changed how the world remembered him forever. The night was June 26, 1977. Indianapolis, Market Square Arena. Nearly 18,000 fans pressed shoulder to shoulder, holding flashbulb cameras and paper flags that read, "We love you, Elvis." The house lights dimmed, and a low hum swept through the rafters like a living heartbeat. Backstage, under the sharp smell of hairspray and aftershave, Charlie Hodge adjusted a stack of scarves. "He's ready," someone whispered, but Elvis wasn't standing near the stage door. He was sitting alone, head bowed, a pen resting in his hand. On the table before him lay a half-folded page of yellow legal pad paper. The top read, June 26th, Indianapolis. For a man about to face a roaring crowd, his silence was thunderous. A stagehand peeked in. "5 minutes, boss." Elvis nodded, but didn't move. He read one line over and over again, the one he'd just written. "To the one who kept the lights on when I went dark." Was he writing to Priscilla? To his fans? To God? No one knew, but that line, and the page beneath it, would become one of the final artifacts of his life. A secret no microphone ever caught. Slow pan across the arena crowd, camera flash bursts syncing to drum beats. Outside the dressing room, Jerry Schilling was pacing. He later said he'd seen Elvis calmer before a show, but never quieter. Something was different that night, Jerry recalled. He looked like a man trying to say something without saying it. And yet, when the orchestra struck the first note of Also sprach Zarathustra, the transformation was instant. Elvis stood, folded the paper once more, and slipped it inside a white TCB scarf, the same kind he'd toss into the crowd later that night. He whispered, "Sing it like a prayer," before walking toward the light. Have you ever kept something unsaid because saying it might break you? What if the truth only fits on paper, not in front of 18,000 people? At 10:30 p.m., spotlights cut through the haze, painting him gold. The crowd's roar was tidal, shaking the steel beams above. But as he gripped the microphone for just a second, he looked left, toward the wings, and smiled at no one in particular. It was as if the letter had given him peace, or permission. The King of Rock was about to perform his final show, and no one in that arena knew it. Every word, every breath felt heavier that night. When he sang, "You Gave Me a Mountain," his voice cracked, not from fatigue, but something deeper. People say it sounded like goodbye. Minutes later, that yellow page sat alone on the dressing table, the ink still drying. It would vanish before morning. Someone took that letter after the show, and what happened to it stayed buried for decades. The morning after that final concert, the city of Indianapolis felt strangely hushed, like the echo after thunder. Inside Graceland, sunlight crawled across the floorboards of Elvis's study, dust particles drifting through the air like lazy confetti. Priscilla wasn't searching for memories. She was helping catalogue the archives for the upcoming tour exhibit. But when she lifted a stack of silk scarves, something yellow slid free. A folded legal pad page with Elvis's unmistakable slant of handwriting. At first glance, it seemed like a set list note, until she saw the heading. June 26, 1977, Indianapolis. Her pulse quickened. 4 words beneath stopped her cold. To the one who kept the lights on when I went dark. She read the line again. It wasn't addressed to anyone by name, yet it carried the tenderness of a confession and the weight of a farewell. This wasn't a love letter, it was a reckoning. Priscilla sat on the edge of his leather chair, the same one he'd used to review lyrics. In the margins were stage notes. Water Before Unchained, Joe, Mike 2 backup. Between them, a raw paragraph. They cheer for the crown, but they never see the cracks under it. Tell them I was still trying to be kind. She pressed a hand over her mouth. For years she'd seen the public Elvis. Flash, rhythm, perfection. This was the private one. Fragile, searching, human. How often do we mistake applause for understanding? And what if the words that could have healed someone arrived too late? The letter continued, gratitude toward Charlie Hodge for steadying the mic stand. A note to Jerry Schilling, thanking him for the jokes that kept me upright. But then one name appeared, written smaller, circled 3 times, Lisa. Underneath, another sentence trailed off mid-word. Tell her then a pen blot, like he'd stopped himself. Priscilla closed her eyes. The sound of the arena crowd flooded her memory. The cheers, the brass intro, the roar when he first stepped out in white. She realized the letter had been written minutes before that moment, between reality and myth. B-roll cue. Faint tape hiss, overlapping crowd noise from the Market Square recording. Her breathing slowed. The final line, written sideways across the page, read, "If I can't say it on stage, I'll sing it." That sentence changed everything she thought she knew about that last night. It wasn't random that he'd chosen Unchained Melody as his closing piece. It wasn't just a crowd pleaser. It was the only way he could speak the letter aloud without reading it. Have you ever realized that someone was talking to you through a song you thought was meant for everyone else? She folded the paper carefully, as if it might crumble, and placed it in a small wooden box marked Private, EP. The air felt heavier, almost reverent. Somewhere in the distance, a phone rang. Startling her back to the present, she answered. It was Jerry Schilling. "Priscilla," he said, voice low, "you might want to hear this. There's something on the bootleg tape from Indy you'll want to check." On that grainy cassette, just before the high note, a whisper had been captured. 2 words that matched the letter exactly. The crowd that night didn't know they were witnessing history. June 26, 1977, Market Square Arena. 18,000 faces shimmering under stage light, every seat filled, aisles overflowing. The air smelled of hairspray, popcorn and flashbulb smoke. The ETA band waited behind the curtain, checking chords, whispering last notes. At 10:41 p.m., the intro thundered. Also, Sprach Zarathustra, drums hit like cannons. The audience roared until the walls trembled. Elvis stepped out in his white Mexican sundial jumpsuit, cape glinting gold under the spotlights. He smiled, waved once, and for a heartbeat, just listened. Then, silence. Not the absence of sound, but a held breath from 18,000 people waiting for him to speak. Backstage, Jerry Schilling watched the monitors, headset crackling. "He's pacing it slow tonight," he murmured. "Yeah," Charlie Hodge said, eyes fixed on the curtain. "He's feeling it." Elvis approached the mic. "Well," he said softly, and the place erupted again. But something about his tone, the softness, the patience, carried weight. He launched into CC Rider. His voice wasn't as strong as before, but it had something deeper. Truth. When he hit the final chorus, he turned toward the wings for half a second. In that blink, the performer disappeared, and the man showed through. He signaled for, "You gave me a mountain." The band shifted keys. The arena quieted, hands lowering cameras instinctively. Each lyric fell like confession. "This time, Lord, you gave me a mountain." His breathing was uneven, yet his phrasing immaculate. Voix softens. Reflective tone. What if the hardest words to say are the ones people are paying to hear? How many times can a man thank the crowd before he wishes he could thank one person instead? Between songs, a boy near the stage barrier held up a hand-drawn sign, "For Lisa, sing Unchained." Elvis smiled faintly. The crowd cheered, but those close enough saw his eyes glisten before he looked away. Backstage, a tech checked the cassette recorder, the one capturing the live feed for internal review. Its red light blinked steadily, unaware it would soon record more than music. The next number was meant to be Hound Dog, but Elvis paused, looked back at Charlie, and shook his head. "Let's skip ahead," he said quietly. "I want to do Unchained Melody." Charlie blinked. "Now?" Elvis nodded. "Now," the stage manager hesitated. "That wasn't the plan. But you don't argue with Elvis Presley on his own stage." The piano bench slid forward with a slow scrape. The crowd murmured, recognizing the shift. No one knew he'd decided this moments before the show. The same moment he'd folded that letter backstage. He sat, took the mic in both hands, and said, "I'd like to do this one myself." The room froze. No guitars, no drums, just him and the piano. He pressed a single key, A-flat, and the note rang out, trembling through the arena like a heartbeat on its last stretch. Camera zooms close, sweat glistening, fingers trembling slightly, spotlight haloing his face. Then he sang. His voice rose and cracked, soared and faltered, but each imperfection made it purer. The audience held their breath. The world shrank to one man, one song, and the unspoken weight behind it. And then, before the bridge, the crowd microphones caught something faint, a whisper between breaths, 2 words, barely audible over the piano. "For you." Those words matched the letter exactly. Was he singing to his daughter, to Priscilla, to the memory of who he used to be, or to everyone he'd ever loved at once? The final note hit like a prayer carried on lightning. He leaned back, eyes closed, face tilted upward as if letting go. The arena didn't erupt, not at first. For 3 full seconds, the world stood still. Then applause burst like a floodgate. Backstage, Jerry whispered, "He did it." Charlie nodded, wiping his eyes. "Yeah, he really did." Elvis smiled once more, bowed low, and said into the mic, "Thank you. Good night." That was the last song he ever sang live. The red light on the recorder blinked twice, then stopped. What no one knew yet, that faint whisper was about to rewrite how history remembered his final night. When the final chord faded, Elvis didn't stand right away. His fingers lingered on the keys, trembling slightly, as if afraid that lifting them would end everything. The audience waited. The silence was holy. Then slowly, he looked up and smiled. Not at the crowd, but toward the left wing of the stage. Jerry Schilling noticed it first. "He's looking at someone," he whispered. But when Jerry followed his gaze, there was only a shadow. A dark figure behind the curtain, motionless. For 3 seconds, the king of rock looked like a man seeing a ghost. He stood, towel draped around his shoulders, and nodded to the band. The crowd screamed as he said, "Thank you, God bless you." But his voice cracked on God. It wasn't performance, it was release. Backstage, chaos returned. Crew rushed to unplug cables. Fans shouted for encores. The brass section exhaled in relief. Yet in the middle of it all, Elvis slipped away quietly through the side hallway that led to his dressing room. He closed the door, leaned against it, and exhaled. The air smelled of cologne, hot lights, and something faintly metallic. The scent of adrenaline fading. On the table lay the folded yellow page he'd hidden beneath a scarf earlier. He opened it. The ink shimmered faintly under the dressing mirror's bulbs. Half a line remained unfinished. "Tell her I still..." He drew a single breath, smiled sadly, and set the paper down. The reflection in the mirror caught him. Tired eyes, trembling hands, still dressed in white like an angel out of time. He whispered, almost to himself, "Sing it like a prayer." That line wasn't just a note, it was a vow. Have you ever promised something to yourself and kept it only in silence? What if your truest confession can't survive the noise of applause? Minutes later, Charlie Hodge knocked on the door. "You okay, boss?" "Yeah," Elvis said without turning. "Just needed a minute." On the table, the letter fluttered slightly under the air vent, revealing one last penciled mark in the corner, a small arrow pointing to the words "Unchained Melody." Charlie peeked in, saw the paper, and reached for it. "You want me to pack this?" Elvis shook his head. "Leave it. It's done." Outside, security escorted the last fans away, flashbulbs still sparking in the corridor. The sound faded until there was nothing. Only the buzz of fluorescent lights and the faint hum of an old cassette deck still spinning backstage. Close-up of tape reel slowing, hiss fading into silence. That night, as the tour bus pulled away from the arena, Jerry asked, "You ever think he knows when something's ending?" Charlie nodded. Yeah, he knew tonight. They didn't talk after that. No one did. A few weeks later, August 16th, 1977, the world stopped. The news bulletins, the headlines, the disbelief, it all came too soon. The letter, thought lost, resurfaced quietly during the cataloguing of his belongings. Priscilla found it again, but this time she noticed something new. On the back of the paper, faint pencil marks shaped like music bars. 3 ascending notes, the same progression used at the end of Unchained Melody. He hadn't just written a letter. He'd written a goodbye disguised as music. She traced the faint graphite lines with her finger, tears balancing on her lashes. The air in the room felt heavy, almost sacred. Every word on that page had already been sung, just not read. When someone leaves this world which lasts longer, their words or the way they made you listen. Priscilla folded the letter again, sealing the air around it like a prayer trapped in paper. She whispered, "You did sing it like a prayer, Elvis." Outside, Memphis evening light filtered through the blinds, striping the room in gold and shadow. Somewhere, a record player spun the faint crackle of Unchained Melody. The whisper from the live tape, "For You," looped again, fragile but eternal, and with that, the story that began in ink finally found its echo in sound. What Priscilla did next would decide whether that letter stayed a secret or became his final message to the world. It was 3 weeks after Elvis passed. Graceland was quieter than it had ever been. No laughter, no band rehearsals bleeding through the walls, just the faint creak of the front stairs and the tick of a grandfather clock. Priscilla sat in his old study, the letter opened in front of her, edges curling like the end of a candle flame. A reel-to-reel recorder whirred softly nearby, playing the Indianapolis bootleg that Jerry Schilling had mailed over. The tape hissed, and then that fragile moment replayed. The piano, the breath, and the faint whisper, "For you." She closed her eyes. The sound wasn't a ghost, it was a heartbeat. Every time she heard it, she felt as if the crowd disappeared, leaving only one man singing to one person. In death, his silence was louder than any encore. Priscilla wasn't alone. Charlie Hodge came by often, carrying coffee and stories from the road. "He wrote everything down, Scylla," he said once. "Little prayers on napkins, back of receipts, anything." They began sorting boxes, photos, lyric scraps, stage passes. Each item was a pulse of the life that used to fill this house. Between folded scarves, Priscilla found a cassette labeled "For Review," 6/26/77 in Elvis's handwriting. She slid it in, pressed play, and the same voice filled the room, raw, imperfect, alive. Halfway through, she heard the piano pedal squeak, the tiny intake of breath before the final high note. Then that whisper again, "For you." How do you share something sacred without letting the world cheapen it? Can love survive public noise? She rewound the tape again and again, each spin of the reel carving grief into clarity. She realized something. The whisper wasn't meant for her alone. It was meant for everyone who'd ever kept the lights on for him when he went dark. Fans, friends, family, even the ones he'd lost touch with. The letter and the whisper belonged together, 2 halves of the same confession. But what to do with them? Joe Esposito called one evening. "They're building an anniversary exhibit," he said. "If you want, we can display something personal." Priscilla hesitated. Personal doesn't always mean public. She walked to the window, looking out at the candlelit vigils outside the gates. Hundreds of fans gathered nightly, singing softly, holding pictures. She realized the letter's message was already alive in them. Crossfade of candle flames outside Graceland gates, overlapping with archival shots of the 1977 stage. That night she made her choice. She didn't publish the letter. Instead, she called a reporter she trusted and said, "He once told me, sing it like a prayer." That's what his last performance was. That's all anyone needs to know. The next morning, headlines ran with her quote, "Elvis's final song was a prayer," says Priscilla Presley. Fans began bringing handwritten notes to Graceland's fence. Messages like, "You kept our lights on," and "Thank you for still being kind." The words from the letter had found their way into the world without ever being printed. The secret didn't die, it multiplied. Weeks turned to months. Every June 26th, a small crowd gathered at the site of Market Square Arena. Long after it was demolished, someone always played Unchained Melody on a portable speaker. Others hummed along, hands over hearts, faces lit by candlelight. Priscilla visited once in secret. She stood at the back, sunglasses on, listening as strangers sang the song that once broke him open. She smiled, whispering under her breath, "He'd have loved this." As the final note drifted into the night air, she could almost hear that old whisper, "For you," woven into the voices of everyone who still believed. Maybe legacy isn't built on what you tell the world, but on what the world keeps saying back to you. She turned, walking toward the car, letter still folded in her purse. The night breeze carried faint music from behind her, a chorus of strangers keeping a promise on his behalf. One day, she knew, someone would find that tape, and the truth in that whisper would begin again. Years passed. The lights of Market Square Arena dimmed forever in 2001 when the building was torn down. But every June 26th, something remarkable kept happening. As the sun fell over Indianapolis, strangers gathered on the empty concrete lot where the stage once stood. Some brought candles, others old concert tickets, and one woman always played Unchained Melody from a weathered cassette player. The arena was gone, but the echo refused to die. A plaque now marks the spot. Elvis Presley, June 26, 1977, "Sing It Like a Prayer." No museum curator ever confirmed who wrote that final line, but everyone there knew. Priscilla watched the dedication ceremony from a distance, standing behind a row of oak trees. She wasn't the grieving ex-wife that tabloids painted years ago. She was the keeper of a promise. Inside her purse rested the same folded page, edges soft, ink fading but still legible. Beside her stood Jerry Schilling, now grey-haired, eyes damp. "He'd like this," he said. Priscilla nodded. "He always said music was supposed to outlive buildings." What does a legacy sound like when the amplifiers are gone? Across the field, a young fan named Rachel Cole, born decades after Elvis's last show, knelt by the plaque. She whispered, "Thank you," and placed a paper flower on the concrete. She'd discovered his music through that one viral clip, the grainy Indianapolis recording that resurfaced online with the faint whisper before the final note. Millions had replayed it, chasing proof of the words "for you." Online comments called it "the note that still breathes." Documentaries debated the meaning. Scholars argued over whether it was meant for Priscilla, for Lisa, or for faith itself. But no one could explain why it moved people the same way every single time. Maybe because the whisper wasn't meant to be solved. It was meant to be felt. The crowd began to sing softly, their voices blending into the evening wind. No microphones, no spotlights, just human sound, fragile, imperfect, and full of gratitude. Priscilla finally stepped forward. She didn't announce herself, didn't speak. She just laid the letter's envelope beside the plaque. The paper fluttered under the breeze like a living thing. She turned and walked away before anyone noticed who she was. As she reached her car, the chorus behind her swelled. Someone hit play on the cassette again. That same hiss, that same heartbeat. The whisper surfaced once more. "For you," riding through old tape static, like a soul refusing to fade. Maybe that was the point all along. To leave behind something small enough to fit in one breath, yet large enough to fill generations. The camera lingers on the plaque, candlelight flickering across the words. "Sing it like a prayer." The sound of wind and faint applause blend until they're indistinguishable. Years later, When a restoration team opens the capsule beneath the plaque, they'll find the folded page, still legible, still glowing faintly under glass. Years after the letter found its final resting place beneath that plaque, the phrase, "Sing it like a prayer," became more than a lyric. It became a way of remembering him. Radio hosts quoted it every June 26th. Fans whispered it before hitting play on Unchained Melody. But to Priscilla, it was never about religion. It was about honesty, the rare kind that strips away performance until only truth remains. Elvis didn't ask to be worshipped, he asked to be understood. When she once explained the phrase in an interview, her voice trembled. He didn't mean pray. He meant mean it. Feel every word, every note, as if it's the only thing that's real. That's what that final song was. Not a curtain call, but confession disguised as melody. Reflective pause. How many of us speak louder in what we do than in what we say? And when your stage lights fade, what remains? Your words or your intention? Today, fans still gather at that empty field, some too young to remember him. Yet they hum the same song. Every generation rediscovers that whisper, for you, and in that small act, the legend becomes human again. Because the real legacy wasn't in the voice that shook arenas, but in the quiet promise he left behind. That kindness, gratitude, and love can echo longer than applause. The music fades out, a single note lingers, then silence, gentle, complete. That was what he meant by prayer. And maybe that's the lesson Elvis left behind. That gratitude whispered in private can outlast cheers shouted in public. If this story moved you, share it forward. Let someone know that their quiet support still matters. Because sometimes the most powerful prayer is simply saying thank you while there's still time.